What's up? This is Rebel Radio.
What up, what up? This is DJ Newmark.
This is Peanut Butter Wolf.
It's your boy. It's okay.
Keep checking out Rebel Radio.
Rebel Radio.
This is Rebel Radio.
We're in the place right here. Rebel Radio is going down.
Would you say Rebel Radio?
Oh, wait. Let's do it again.
Rebel Radio.
Today's guest, Steve Rennie, the Renman, host of RenmanMB, your online music business educational resource. He hosts a kind of a college of sorts through YouTube interviews, audio interviews, and lessons from leaders in the music industry. If you're trying to learn about the music business, trying to get your game on, Renman is the way to go. He blesses us today with some serious wisdom. One of my favorite things he talks about is that your love for something is tested not in its best moments, but in its worst moments. So it's all good to say you love your job or your career when everything's going really well, but do you love it when it's not fun? That's really what matters, because that's what's going to make you keep showing up and get it done. And now let's get into the interview with Steve Rennie, the Renman. But welcome to Rebel Radio. Our guest today, Steve Rennie, the Renman.
Nice to be here. In the quasi-dark. This is very vibey, Josh.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for being here. I've been hearing about you from our mutual friend Ethan
Bear.
from EDM.com, who
Yep.
was a guest on the show.
Yeah.
If you don't know, EDM.com is they're a co-presenter of this show with us, so they're a very important partner
Okay.
to Rebel Radio. And we're here taping in Mike Caron's studio.
Okay.
Mike
He's
is
been
kind
a guest
of our,
on the show.
I know you've had him on the show.
Beverly
Mike's kind
High
of our
graduate.
patron.
Yeah.
He's kind of our patron saint. He
Is
gives
he?
us
We should try to go up and say hello.
Absolutely. Yeah, he takes care of us, gives us the space here to do this.
Good.
And so I've been, I found out about the show, about Renman Live through Ethan, and now have been watching and listening. And you had your interview with Paul Tillett, who's one of my heroes, the creator of Coachella. I thought was brilliant.
Yeah.
And
He's
really,
a great guy.
Yeah, it really brought, I've known Paul for a number of years, and we've worked together here and there. And, it really brought to life, like, what a special guy he is, and how just amazing his vision for Coachella and what that's meant.
Yeah. Well, he's a great example for people out there that are looking to do something, because I met Paul, it seems like he must have been 14, because we used to call him the Beav. For most of your audience won't remember Leave It to Beaver, but I'm sure you could Google her. It's on some cable channel. Yeah. And Beav was this, innocent young kid, and there was Wally, his wacky brother, and then there was Eddie Haskell, who was the local, kind of miscreant and so forth. But Beav was unaffected by all of that. So that's what I always think about with Paul Tillett. And he's still got his baseball hat, and he's, got a few more lines on his face. And but he's living proof to just stick at it. Do what you do, and he's never seemed to want to be anything that he really isn't. So it was fun doing Renman Live. I get a chance to see people that I've known for a long time, and you get a chance to talk to them, and you always find out things you didn't know. But Paul, it's been fun to watch him and some of the guys that work with him. The whole Warped Tour with Kevin Lyman. Kevin was his backstage production manager guy, and we used to promote shows at the Hollywood Palladium when there was a guy by the name of Gary Tovar that was actually the godfather of Golden Voice, and he was in the produce business, and that's how we met.
Yeah, absolutely.
Always good green at the Palladium.
Yeah. Well, I want to hear about the old days and how you got started. For anyone that doesn't know, though, Renman Music Business it's an online school. How would you describe it?
I'd say it's a great place if you're interested in the music business as an artist trying to do something on a creative level, or somebody like myself that's not a creative person, that wants to be involved on the business side. It's a great place to learn about the music business if you believe that learning and interacting and talking with and getting advice from people that have actually done it is important. And for me, I've always been about the doers. I'm not interested in theorists. I'm not interested in philosophers, and maybe that makes me a shallow person, but that's of no interest to me. I'm interested in people that have done it, whether it's somebody playing golf. I love playing with golfers that are better than me. I had a tournament this past weekend. I got killed by a guy who was a big-time tennis player. Now he's retired. His name is Marty Fish. Retired from it was a top 10 tennis player in the world. He's retired from tennis now. He plays golf. And he kicked my ass. And he goes, dude, don't you hate playing, Marty? I said, hate it? Fuck, are you kidding me? I couldn't get enough of it, okay, because you want to play.
Yeah. That's how you
whether
learn,
it's the
right?
music business or golf or tennis, whatever, you want to play with people that are doing it because you can learn from them. And I think a lot of people when they first start off go, well, I can't do that. I'd be intimidated. I go, fuck, get over that, man. Go in there, and if you're going to screw up, do it around people that are been there and done it because they've all screwed up too, and you'll learn something, and it'll actually help fast track you. So RenmanMB is really kind of, a place where, through no grand plan other than that would be nice to talk to some of my buddies and maybe some people can learn, is turned into a place where if you're serious, I'd say, folks, don't waste all that money going to some university that's going to hand you a piece of paper that isn't, with all the greatest respect, isn't worth the paper it's written on.
Sure.
In the music business.
Yeah.
If you're a doctor, different. If you're a lawyer or an engineer, different. But learn from people that are doing it. So we've had a lot of those folks on the show.
Why is the music business so different from these other professions you talk about?
It's a great question. I think you can start with that the product itself is it comes from emotional place, right? Creativity is not something we're going to screw this on here, we're going to tighten this bolt here, we're going to put this rocket fuel in here, and if everything goes right, it should go.
Yeah.
Those are logical things that have a bit of science and so forth. In music, at its beginning is an emotional release for a lot of artists. You ask people, why the fuck would you do this for a living? And almost to the man or woman, they all say, because I have to do this. So that's not necessarily a rational thought.
Sure.
So let's start with that. At the core of it, the product is not rational, it's emotion. And emotions can take you in all kinds of different places. And then you try to put a business wrapper around that and to try to contain it and to try to make some sense out of it. And it winds up being a business that's difficult to write down the steps. It's not like if you do 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, you get 6. It could be anything. So, so getting your head in the right place to deal with that kind of environment is key to it. And so, I think that's what makes it tough.
Yeah.
And then you throw in all kinds of other things like you're trying to judge people's taste. What might grab your heart or hit a nerve in you might not work for me, And you'll see it all the time when people are playing rock critic. Oh, I think Ariana Grande is bullshit, or I think this artist is bullshit, or whoever it might be. And yet millions of people think it means something to them. So I learned a long time ago, for me, don't play rock critic. But it speaks to my personality. If I'm like about results, if people are doing it and they're making some ground and headway, I'm looking at that, not trying to figure out how to be different than all of those folks for the sake of being different.
Yeah.
So it's a tricky business on the best of days.
Sure.
But incredibly gratifying when you get it right. That's what keeps everybody coming back.
Well, I got to tell you, I wish that RenmanMB had been around when I was getting started. So I started.
It's not too late, Josh.
It's definitely too late. But I started out in the music business. I was a manager.
Crazy fuck.
Coming out of college or even in college, and it occurred to me we had the Baker Boys on the show recently, who were clients of mine in the '90s, and I had a discussion with them on the show that I wasn't a very good manager for them, largely because I ran into some roadblocks and I didn't know what to do. And I wasn't wise enough at the time to ask for help.
Yeah.
And I just sort of was like, just keep banging my head up against the wall and maybe it'll crack open, or maybe my head will crack open.
Yeah, one of them, yeah.
And so, having a resource like this, and I think, in a broader sense, just, the internet and the access to information that we have is a game changer.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think in some ways, as difficult as it is to connect with people in the music business, I would argue that it's easier today than it's ever been.
Sure.
Okay, because there weren't things like the internet. There weren't resources like this where you could go to find information. And you're not alone in the fact that I think, and it's particularly true for young people, and I say that as a former young person, hard to believe, that you want to be smart. You want to seem ahead of the game. And so asking a question or saying, I don't know, feels like weakness.
Yeah.
And over time, you learn that that's not weakness.
Right.
Saying, I know when you don't is actually stupid. It's worse than being weak. Okay? There's weak people that are smart enough to cover themselves with people that can fill in their blanks. Stupid people just do stupid things. So I learned very early on from this little old lady that I used to caddy for. I've always been a fan of sound bites, the little thoughts that stick. And I remember I was out caddying for one Friday, and I can't remember what it was, but I was talking about something, and she said, Stevie, you don't ask, you don't get, right?
It's our favorite line.
And
We use that around the office.
but it's fucking
love
true, right?
Yeah.
And so these are these little nuggets of things that have stuck with me over years. So when young people are trying to figure out what the path is or what are the little dots I need to connect, I go, no, you won't find it in your details or your details. Get up a little bit bigger than this, okay? You want something to happen. You need to know what the answers are. So what are you going to do? Do your homework, and that means asking questions. Today you can Google almost freaking anything,
Right.
okay? There was no Google back in the day when I started.
Right.
So these are great resources, but at the big picture level, you have to accept that, okay, I don't know. And saying I don't know is not weakness. Saying I don't know, but I'm gonna figure it out is what I look for in young people. The people that go, I don't know how to do, I don't know. And after about 3 I don't knows that aren't followed by, but you know what, Steve? I can see I'm gonna go do a little homework and try to sort this out. That's what attracts me to business people, right? So it isn't their experience, it isn't their degree, it's their attitude. That I'm looking for, that ability to sit there and go, well, fuck, I don't know. And it's funny how the big managers that I've known over the years all have that mentality in their own way, which is, wow, I don't fucking know. Get so-and-so on the phone. Get me fucking Herbie, right? And they immediately go into fact-finding mode, right?
Sure.
Versus the people who go, well, nobody will return my call. And I just go, what's your point?
Right.
Okay? Keep calling, okay? What's your point? Are you ready to quit? It's too tough for you? Then I'll wait. You can leave. Somebody will take your seat. No shortage of people that want to sit at the table. So that attitude, whether you're an artist or a professional, is the most important thing. And so I hope some of the stuff that we've done on our website, when I've talked to these different people, I always ask them questions I know the answers to, right? Because it's the big picture that I want people to figure out, which is, these people just, I'm going to do this somehow. And they figured it out, and they were relentless, and they stayed in the scoring zone where something good could happen. They weren't just waiting for the answer to come walking through the door. It doesn't happen that way. Or it hasn't happened that way for me. I shouldn't be so general.
So let's talk about how that's played out in your career. So I know you've been a manager, right, for Incubus,
amongst others,
I think you ran Epic Records for a while.
Record executive at Epic Records.
Okay. And then if I understand, you started out as a promoter, right?
I started as a concert promoter. First, before Avalon, I started my own company.
Okay.
And I think it speaks to that kind of attitude thing, which I look back now and I think that some of these things that I talk about and I'm conscious of today, I wasn't so conscious of at the time, but I was exhibiting it, right? I was booking shows back in college, and I was talking with my son today.
What's the first show you booked?
Back in college, it was either, I can't remember. I can tell you the shows I booked over, the highlights. There was Gil Scott-Heron, there was Eddie Money.
Nice.
I know I wanted to book Cheap Trick in the worst fucking way possible. I remember when I started and left college, afterwards I tried to get a job working at William Morris in the mailroom, right? And I knew all the agents there because I'd been a buyer in college, and I learned very quickly, much better to spend your money than mine.
Sure.
Okay, I can do that with no freaking conscience, and that's I wish I could do that every day. And so I'd met some agents, and I caddied at a local country club where I used to caddy in the group with the chairman of William Morris and all these people that
Smart.
just it wasn't. It turned out to be fortuitous, but it wasn't. That was my love of golf.
Right. It wasn't a plan.
It wasn't a plan, and I worked at a club where there were lots of show business. But that painted in so many ways my attitude subconscious that I saw successful people in the entertainment business, and I saw them. If you're not a golfer, you won't appreciate it. I saw them on a golf course where golf is a sport, has this way of exposing the real person.
Yeah.
If you cheat on the golf, you will cheat in business. If you are going to bitch about everybody else is the reason you're going to be that person in the office, you know? And so it gave me a look on things. But anyway, long story short, I applied for the William Morris mailroom. I went through the whole process. I knew I was going to be in, right? And they did a degree check. I mean, I've been going to USC on a debate scholarship after going to Santa Monica College, where I started booking shows. And they wouldn't let me in. And I used all my contacts at Hillcrest Country Club to literally get a meeting with Abe Lasvogel, the chairman, who was so old they propped him up in a chair, like Fidel Castro, except he was about 4 feet tall. And there was a guy, Norman Brokaw, all these guys. And all of them were sitting there. I know half of them in the room go, how the fuck did this kid get all us here today? Anyway, long story short, they said, well, kid, you got to go back to college and finish up your degree. And I won't go into the reasons why I didn't finish, except that I figured out how to turn scholarship credits into cash.
Nice.
Not a great long-term move, but certainly solved some short-term problems. Anyway, I couldn't get in there, so I wound up starting my own concert company, which was crazy. But I talked 4 guys two were in the finance business, 2 were lawyers who were rock and roll dudes, and it was back in the roaring 80s where everybody's shoveling, blowing, Party Central, and I was like, hey, fine, we'll give the kid, you see these guys gave me $25,000 to go book concerts, and kids ask me, how'd you do that? I go, I can't even tell you how accepted I was on a mission to make something happen. I don't even remember how I met these freaking guys, you know? But, that got me in the game, and then eventually, after picking Avalon's pocket a couple times through relationships, both of which started with golf, not to get on the golf thing, but speak to networking and building a real relationship with people. I picked their pocket a couple times, and they decided to hire me. And so that's how I got to Avalon Attractions, by being a doer. But there was no grand plan. It was just me out there going,
right.
and every moment I thought it was going to end.
Yeah.
And honestly, for almost 40 years now, I still feel that way.
Is that
it could all just end tomorrow. My wife kids me about it all the time. She goes, how much money would you need before you would calm down? I said, I don't think it's about the money.
Right.
Yeah, it doesn't. Sure. Yeah. So what is it about? What is the? You said you started out. You were on a mission, right? And that drove you. Where'd that come from?
I've loved rock.
Yeah.
If you ask me what the great loves of my life, I'll start with my family, right? And rock music and golf were the 2 consistent before I had a wife and kids.
Sure.
Were like the 2 common denominators for me, and that's why I sometimes feel like the most boring guy in the world, that I just did stuff that I knew how to do and that I enjoyed doing, and it worked out.
Do you remember when that light turned on for you?
I can tell you when the light turned on. When I got out of high school, I loved playing golf, and it has been my longest love affair of my life. I started it when I was 14, and it was like freaking drugs for me, man. And so when I got out of college, high school, I went to college for a semester, wasn't really into it. I was going to Santa Monica College. I didn't have a rich dad to pay for it, So, and I didn't enjoy it. And so I thought, you know what, I want to be a golf pro. I want to be Jack Nicklaus was the yardstick back then, not Tiger Woods. And so I did that, and I quit, and I worked, caddying at that country club. Then I started working in the golf shop, and then I got my PGA apprentice card. I had visions of going on the tour. And over the course of 3 or 4 years that I did it, I showed up every day at crack of dawn, just like I was today out there, waiting for the sun to come up at Bel Air, and you know, my cup of coffee. I didn't smoke cigars back then, but, you know, that was my routine. Ironically, here I am 60 doing the same freaking thing, you know. But that was what I really wanted to do. And then at some point, it just became obvious to me that my dream of playing on the tour was going to end with me teaching little old Jewish ladies how to play golf, which is not really what I had in mind. Sure. And so I thought, fuck, okay, this isn't going to work out. You know, I grew up in Beverly Hills, and, you know, and when you grow up in Beverly Hills, you're going to be a doctor or a lawyer. Mm-hmm. And if that doesn't work out, you better be something in show business, would be like a real generalization of it, right? So I went back to college with the thought of going to law school and becoming a lawyer. And when I got to college, the first thing I did was take a class in public speaking. I thought, well, if you're going to be a lawyer, you're going to have to get comfortable speaking to people. And so that little twist of fate led to meeting this guy who was teaching the class. Said, you're pretty good. And he had another guy who'd gone to Beverly Hills Catholic School, who I'm still friends with. Mm-hmm. Same thing. He was kind of a degenerate in high school. I don't want to say degenerate, but I got suspended once for, you know, ditching school for a week, not to do drugs, but to caddy in the LA Open. Got caught by the freaking assistant principal who saw me on a Friday because he was ditching the afternoon go out to watch the LA Open too. And so anyway, I got to Santa Monica College, and so the coach of the debate team, me and my partner would go to this debate tournament. It was the oddest thing. We're like these two kind of quasi-stoners, you know, and with all these geeky guys, and we win the first tournament against all odds. And it wasn't because we were the smartest guys. It was because we stood out like sore thumbs amongst these geeks, and people liked to say, "Oh, these guys are funny. Look, these guys are sarcastic." And so anyway, he had the genius idea, "Hey, Steve, we need to increase our budget. You need to run for student government." I guess student government? You fucking kidding me? I'm not going to run for student government. Anyway, we did it. I get elected vice president of the school, and the guy who was booking concerts comes up to me one day and goes, "You know, I don't really like talking to agents or managers," and he's the guy in charge of booking concerts. So this is like the doctor tells you, "I'm a little nervous about blood and cut and stuff, but let me go ahead and take your heart out," right? Whoa, hang on, doc. So anyway, he goes, "Do you want to help me?" I said, "Fuck yeah." I'm thinking, sure. And so I immediately jumped in there. That guy all but stepped aside, and that's how I got started. Yeah. And I think the very first time I went from being the rock fan to going, hold it, I'm the guy throwing a friggin' party now, and everybody wants to meet me. I like this a lot, you know, and that's how I started. And so that was really an extension of that guy that would go to concerts and the Rolling Stones and the Who and Led Zeppelin and be sitting there on the edge of the seat, and those lights would drop, and you're going, oh, God, awesome. This is going to be fucking great, right? Yeah. And I never lost that feeling over my 40 years in the music. Every time Incubus went on stage, it would be like they go, "Okay, I've got him in the tunnel, drop the lights." And I would always be at the sound desk going, "Fuck yeah, I love this."
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Right.
Sure.
Yeah. So that's kind of how I got started doing it.
How did that change for you? I mean, I think it's great that energy has stayed with you. But I imagine it must change when it goes from this thing that you're doing because you love it to like, this is my company and my profession and my career.
Yeah. Well, yeah. You know, because it doesn't, you know, when it's easy to look back and think of all the great moments and kind of bury the moments that weren't so great, right? And I've certainly had a few of those. But, you know, I think if you love what you do, and I'll use golf as an analogy again, right? I love playing golf, but you have an expectation. Sure. And you start to spend time at it, and you want to think that your time and energy will be rewarded. And oftentimes it's not, right? And so that your love for something is tested, you know, not in its best moment, but in its worst moments. And so I kid around all the time when I play bad golf. You know, I'll say, "Fuck, I'm quitting today." And everybody will go, "See you in the morning?" Yeah. Right? Because I quit 6 times a week and I start 7. Right. And the music business can be really frustrating. And it can be, for the reasons we talked about earlier, that it's not just about logical stuff. You know, you play in a golf tournament, the low score wins every time. End of story. That's why they have the 19th hole, so everybody can cry and bitch about their day. The music business doesn't have a 19th hole, you know, and it's played out with real people and artists that struggle with different things. I kid around about, you know, that fear and insecurity and are part of people, and we all have it, and paranoia and all these things that everybody has, but I think they're particularly acute in the music world, particularly from artists' point of view, when you're putting all your stuff out there, and people are going to judge it.
Right.
And sometimes they're not going to judge it as tenderly as you'd like, and that's difficult to stomach. And so if you're a manager on the one end of that, you got to deal with that and try to inspire and keep everybody together. And I think because the nature of the music business it really is nowhere or somewhere, if you ask me. And anything in between is really a snapshot of you moving in one direction. This notion that kind of floats around that there's some middle class or some middle ground in the music business certainly hasn't been my experience. You're either making money, or you're not, right? And that's what heightens all of that even more versus if you had a job at a company where you show up from 9 to 5 and you're working for Johnson & Johnson. They're not going broke anytime soon.
Right.
They make their numbers, things go on. You hit your number, you've hit your budget. It's much tighter and tidier for the people that want it to be tidy. Music business isn't tidy.
Well, one thing that struck me, as I got out of management, because I learned that wasn't my path, and started working with corporate brands. And around that time, I heard a statistic published that this was late '90s, that like 95% of records lose money.
Probably more, I bet.
Probably, and certainly I think now that whole dynamic's changed. I mean, the definition of making money has probably changed. But, that struck me at the time we were doing some work for Toyota. And I just thought, what if, if 95% of their cars lost money, they wouldn't have a business. Yeah. Probably something like 0% of their cars lose money because, as you said, they structure things a certain way. Yeah. And, I don't know. For me, that made me question, like, how is this a real business?
I think it's... I couldn't agree more with you. But it is a business. Sure. And there are winners. Somebody's winning every day. Yeah. When the stock market is crashing, somebody's winning that day. The guy that bet or the gal that bet that it was going to go down, right? So, hard to imagine that Katy Perry thinks it's not a business, or the managers. We were talking, my son and I, on the way over here. A good friend of mine is a guy by the name of Richard Griffiths, who was really my mentor at Epic Records, who kind of gave me that last piece of the puzzle that I needed to see to make me the best manager I could be when I found an act, Incubus, that had those requisite talent, energy, great performance, that needed the business element. Because those things work off of each other, right? Yeah. And anyway, he left the record business eventually and became a manager and got hooked up with One Direction. And I had a chance to play golf one day with Harry Styles. He's a really good kid and a pretty good golfer, and which sort of bummed out all his 14-year-old friends. Why is he playing with this old guy? Because the old guy plays golf. And anyway, we were talking about One Direction and whether they're a great band or one for the ages or whatever, but I can tell you they're 5 years in the sun. Yeah, I know what that looked like, and that looked like a business. Yeah, Sure. Here's the interesting part of it. For artists out there that might be fortunate enough to get to that place, it's easy to think that that's going to go on forever, when in the big scheme it's like you get 5 years in the sun. Yeah. And one of those lessons that I've been preaching, which is very crass but very important, is get the money. Because when you do have that opportunity to score in the music business, and you forget that it's a moment, not a lifetime. For some, maybe it's a lifetime. Sure. There's a few, the Rolling Stones, and it's like 2 handfuls maybe, right? But there's some great moments out there, and I hope for all these artists that are out there, Chris Brown always comes to mind with the Cars and the 8 Cars and the Lunacy and the Lawyers. This guy's a case study for somebody who's going to walk away, have made a lot of money, and be doing Geico commercials to pay the rent, and that's stupid, right? So if you're lucky, folks, whether you're an artist, a manager, be smart. And some of my young buddies in the business that I talk to now, they all give me how well they're doing, and I turn into dad every time going, dude, don't piss it all away. Yeah. what would happen if you got fired tomorrow? Would you still be a big guy?
Yeah.
And would you be able to pay your rent? And a couple of those guys go like sober. I mean, I'm thinking, think about it, dude. I've watched it too many
Well,
times.
what about the artists who don't want to go after the money because it may not match their identity?
Easy.
What do you tell
That's
them? Like,
the
you're just
easiest.
going to have to struggle.
No, because if they don't care about the money, Cassandra, then they have the easiest recipe to fill in the world, because they probably won't make any money, right? And
Right.
it's like, then it's a hobby. And again, some of your folks, I know I'm going to scare them because I'm not talking about culture. I'm more about reality.
That's
you
all
know?
right. We need a balance.
Is that, you probably won't make any money in the business. And if you are doing something where you do it strictly for love and not for money, that's a hobby in my world. That's golf for me. But I think artists got to be honest with themselves, because people say that to me, well, I don't really care about making money. And I go, great, then you're going to do great.
Right.
But is that
That's
true?
not really what they meant.
Right.
And I'll give you the analogy. If you aren't invited to the cool party, do you sit there and go, well, I'm not cool enough to be at that party? Do you go, fuck them, I wouldn't go to their party
Right.
even if they invited me?
Right.
And then you get an invite,
And you go.
and then you go.
I know. It's so funny.
Right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's just a way for us
I never
to, like,
wanted to work for the
justify-
big promoters. In fact, the funny story, true story, is that when one of the partners at Avalon eventually hired me, right, said, hey, we'd like to come, and think I'd love to have you come and work at our place. I sat there with just the greatest confidence and stupidity and told this guy, you know what, I just want to be king of my own castle. And he looked at me, you don't have a castle. And he just looked at me like, are you out of your fucking mind, kid?
Yeah.
And I remember still sitting in that office going, oh, shit. I'm used to sitting here talking tough with my buddies over
Right.
beer and smoking weed.
Sure.
I'm in here with a real tough guy now,
Yeah.
and he just went blank on my best pitch.
Right.
That's all you got? Anyway, 4
Yeah.
weeks later, I joined up on the team here, and all my buddies said, Rennie, I thought you weren't going to. I said, I changed my mind.
Yeah.
Sure.
Because I wanted to be part of the club.
Yeah.
Right. Well, that's one of the things I find so interesting about the music business, and such a corollary to what's happening in business more generally today is just the rate of change.
Yeah.
Right. That, like you said, you can be on top of the world this year, next year, not so much. Right. That there's not, there's not this straight line to success.
Yeah. I think it's that way for everybody. I'm friends with people that are in all kinds of different businesses, right? And I think in the music business, we want to make what we do, really unique
Sure.
and special.
Yeah.
And I think it's because we're just kind of fluffing ourselves a little bit, you know what I mean? But in the technology business, how much are things changing, right?
Absolutely.
Right.
In the airline business, how much are things changing? In every business, how about the car business, right? I have a Tesla, right? So the last 2 years I've been driving around a Tesla. It's like a souped up golf cart. You walk up to the car, the door opens, you sit on the thing goes, you step on the gas, you don't even put the key. Now somebody banged into me, and now I'm driving a real car again, right? And I'm reminded
Yeah.
of how far ahead Tesla's vision is. Now, whether the company succeeds long term or not, if
Right,
you were
sure.
short in the stock this week, you'd be great. If I'd have bought stock in Tesla the same time I bought my Tesla, I could have bought 5 freaking Teslas,
Yeah.
right? But they are way out ahead of
Absolutely.
the rest of the people. And so
Right.
now that's forcing change. And so I see, the BMW electric car, and all
Sure.
these people are going, oh, that guy's fucking crazy.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Really?
Yeah, and I think we see that in music all the time, right? That music relies on trends, right?
Yeah. Pop music for certain.
Certainly, I tell the story when I was a manager. When I was doing management, I had an opportunity to meet with Eminem, who was looking for a manager at the time. His album hadn't come out yet,
Yeah.
and I said, white rapper, I'm good. No one's gonna buy that,
Nobody's going to buy that.
right?
Yeah.
And and then 3 years later, every major label had a white rapper,
Yeah.
and everyone was playing catch up, and because
Yeah.
culture
Yeah.
dictated what was
Yeah.
going on, right? And I think, the Tesla example is a great thing. It's just that in music, I think that happens faster.
Oh, yeah.
And I think there's a illusion of stability, maybe in other businesses.
Yeah.
that is an illusion, but I think in music maybe we don't have that pretense.
Well, because when you think about it, pop music, it's really what is about the moment, right? And that's is based on what people are buying into, where their headspace is at any given moment. We were talking in the office. I don't want to pick on Meghan Trainor, right? But we were talking about great moments versus careers, right? Yeah. And so even though I've retired as a manager, I can't stop playing armchair manager. I become like John Madden up in the booth with Al Michael. Well, Jesus Christ, So we're looking at the chart things, and for some reason yesterday I just thought I'm going to go through all the fucking songs on the Billboard Top 100. Yeah. And so we get to Meghan Trainor, and it says this is Meghan Trainor's fourth single from her record. And the first one, 8 weeks, it's all about that bass. And then she released another one, and it was number 4, right? Great. And then she released the third one, which was number 14. And I said, I'd have stopped at 3. Yeah. Because if the next one is 25, the people in the business are going to go, she's over,
done.
Right?
Yeah.
Right? And so I don't know who her manager is, and maybe I'll get a fucking horrible email or somebody will shoot me or whatever. But if they call me up, I'd sit there and go, dude, get them off the racetrack. Don't keep showing down in the music business, man. Because people will head for the exits. Now, maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe this new world of the music business and all these young kids that are doing it today are going to come up with a different recipe. But that's when I think the big picture is bigger than all of us. Right. You get your moment, and the ones that turned it into a career had more than one moment, but they also had somebody guiding and playing, puppeteer a little bit, going, painting a picture and so forth. So I hope your next single does great, Meghan, because I sure did like, it's all about that.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah, I sang it forever.
It was culture because it winds up in TV shows because it comes that snapshot. So maybe that's a song for a summer or the spring or whatever it was.
Absolutely.
So can the fans not save that? Like you said, the music industry sees that happening and then they're like, she's over. But are the fans saying that?
If you look at Justin Bieber, the guy over the last couple of years on paper was doing everything wrong, right?
Right.
And I started to sit there and think, well, I hope he kept his money. And I say that because there's a little house right above my house. It's not a little house. It's this wall of glass. And we've had all kinds of idiotic neighbors. If somebody built this house on spec, it's all glass, which I said, if you wanted to be, in a display window, it'd be great. Right? Anyway, he rented this house for, what was it, 60 freaking grand a month. So I'm sitting there thinking how much money this fucking kid is spending, and he'd get kicked out of every neighborhood, right? And now he's got another hit.
Yeah.
And so I sat there and think, well, if Junior was working through his worst moments of being 18, 19, which is fucked up even on a good day if you don't have the whole world watching, to be fair to Justin Bieber, right? Maybe now he's going to live through his very public adolescence and turn out to be something bigger than he was showing in his worst moments, right? But they're rare.
Yeah.
Right.
In golf, you get a mulligan. If you miss your first one, your buddies want to give you a mulligan. There aren't many mulligans in the music business.
Not really.
But to his credit, here he is again.
Well, I think, Cassie brings up an interesting question that, as the technology has in many ways democratized music, right? And it's given fans a voice that they may not have had in the past. I wonder how much of that is real, meaning, I think in the past maybe it's been easier for the industry, the labels, to control the path of an artist. They could just keep investing money, right?
Eventually, though, they stop unless they get sales.
Sure. Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Of course. But, I wonder, we've had this argument about, you can look on YouTube and see what's...
It's real if those people, in my world, it's real, and it's real if you want to build a career, if they feel so strongly about you that they'd come to see you in concert, that you were so good that you'd come again, okay? That you introduced yourself by doing covers because you were very handsome or very cute, because it seems to me so many of these kids have the same sugary little voice. Everybody's working the same side of the street, right? that maybe somebody jumps out of that and becomes a big star. Justin Bieber is a good example. This kid, Shawn Mendes, has a very sugary, pop, sweet little song on the radio that sounds to me, and go ahead, send me the email, Steve at Ren Management, folks. He sounds just like Justin Bieber and all these guys. So what is he going to do to distinguish himself and say this is what makes him unique, right? So 9 million fans on YouTube is the absolute minimal commitment, right? All they have to do is click like. That's not like paying $9.99 for the album. It's not like paying $50 for a ticket.
Right.
It's not like watching your biggest hero flame out in public. That's a no commitment. That's like winking across the bar. Does that mean you're getting married? You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
So I think that and I think those numbers can be manipulated too. You can go out and hire Virul or any of these things, and you can buy views and so forth. And you could argue that when products are advertising on TV, not 90 million football fans are interested. They're trying to figure out, here's 90, can I get 9,000 or whatever it might be. But what'll be interesting to see is how many of those sensations turn a little bit of smoke into fire. And I think that's the real yardstick. And isn't it interesting that Justin Bieber got on a major label, has a big-time manager. I don't know who Shawn Mendes' manager is, but I'm betting it's somebody legit by now. And the record's being put out on a real label, and they're bringing in all the freaking songwriting guns. So they've inserted this face, this name, into the machine. The great artists, in my opinion, don't get created by the machine. You can't create Adele, right? And she just opens her mouth and sings. It's just like, that's as real as a heart attack. You know what I mean? When she did that thing at Someone Like You at, not Carnegie Hall, Royal Albert Hall, and the tears, I mean, you're saying that's somebody who cut their veins and is bleeding in front of you. That's a different breed of cat, in my opinion. And if it will last longer, in my opinion.
This is like, I don't know how to word this question, but you said music, the industry goes by trends, but can a record label take somebody it's not trending yet, new, and make it a trend with all the resources they have? Can you force something like that?
You can't force acceptance at the end of the day. Right. People are it either connects or they don't. But if somebody who has talent takes time to develop, and that talent is developing, and that the, quote, market might be out here and act might be here, right? I hate to reminisce, but I'll say it. Back in the good old days of the music business, when they were making a shit pile of money and they were hosing artists 18 ways, there was a lot more money. So labels like Warner Brothers could take a chance with an act and have them break on their third album, right? Incubus broke on their second album and their third album. So, and they were, I might be biased, but they were a very classic development story. No single to radio on the first one. No real video on the first one. Just tour support and banging it out and doing all the right stuff. Could the labels do that? I think, yes. They haven't lost any of their ability to. What mitigates it mightily in today's world is this short attention span. Labels aren't making the kind of money they used to make. So whether you love them or hate them, I'm here to tell you they are not making the kind of money they used to make. And if anybody doubts that, let's get a piece of paper out. I'll wait, If you sold 30 million records, Alanis Morissette, okay, and the label was getting $10 wholesale, okay, which they were, okay. You couldn't buy the single off the album. You bought the album, right? So that was $300 million on that record. Take the biggest record of the year, Taylor Swift, 3 million copies sold, right? So just do the arithmetic. You love them, hate them. The biggest winners now are doing 10% of what the big winners did back in the day, and that has an impact. So I think it impacts, Cassie, their patience and their staying power. They need to see it right now. So where people might have gone on a date and send you roses and flowers and and a little wine. Now everybody's like, are we doing this or not?
Right.
Yeah. And if you're not great, I'm out of here.
Right. So is that
that's bad, horrible example for people, but
is that scary for the music industry, losing that patience and not actually seeing quality through? Or
it puts a greater onus on talent to show right now, and I think that's why you see the record business has always gone to the things that work, right? So I was going through the charts yesterday and couldn't believe how many Max Martin songs were on there. Now this guy's had 80 freaking. He's like the go-to guy, right? And so they're going to keep going to him until there's nothing else there, right? So it speaks to they want it now, so everybody's going to help you more, or they want things that they know how. Okay, she's pretty, she's great. We'll give her some songs. We'll get Max to do this. We'll have her do makeup. We'll have her go and sit at Kim Kardashian at the Fendi show with Kanye West while he's trying to figure out his next fashion, all that stuff. And that's why Bob Lefsetz, who was on our show recently,
that was a great interview.
I used to not like Bob that much, but we get along great now because he's very biting on his analysis of things, right? Which is, there ain't real artists out there. If real artists are the ones that stand up and sing and make you cry with a piano, okay, and you're not like checking out, her gear and her outfit and her, that it's all manufactured because they need it right now.
Right.
And they're going to keep going to things that work because in business, successful businesses try to, at some point, mitigate risk, not add to it, whether you're a music company or not. So that's what makes it interesting today from my perspective. But can they do it? Sure they could. Do they have the patience and the resources today? Debatable.
Right. But so is it a problem?
Is it a problem? It's not been a problem for Katy Perry. It hasn't been a problem for Rihanna. Hasn't been a problem for Jay-Z or Beyonce. If it's a problem if you're Bob Dylan today.
Yeah, and so
I
agree, and I think if you're a rock fan, if you're a hip hop fan, the way I grew up, like these, the Bob Dylans of the world are critical because although they don't sell a lot of records, Dylan, he's a household name now, right? But in his day, he wasn't a mainstream act. But they inspire other artists to go out and be great. So, Jay-Z talks about, in interviews, how he was inspired by a layer of guys who most people have never heard of, but he was always trying to outdo them or trying to live up to the standards they had set. So what happens to that in this environment with the labels that you're talking about?
Those artists, this is just my opinion, those artists who are so clearly fueled by their own sense of what their true north is. They are being who they are.
Yeah.
They're not being crafted, right? If they get it right, if they stay in the game, if they're in it because the music business is screaming so loud, I have to do this, Cassie, right? They're going to be in there, and if they keep doing what they're doing, Hozier writes some great, those are pop songs, but I hear the lyrics in there, man, and you can feel it in his voice, Now, does he have 10 years of that in him? I don't know. But that's a different breed of cat than, no disrespect, it's all about the bass, which is all about right now, right? Yeah. Versus things that are a little bit longer. So I think for artists that are really serious about this, they'll demonstrate it by doing what the Black Keys did.
Right.
They're grinded out. These guys are in their mid-30s. They're not kids. They defy the logic. You don't break after you're 30 in the music business. Right. But they did. And somebody asked me, well, why did they get over earlier? I said, maybe they weren't as good. Yeah. Maybe they needed time to develop. Maybe every shitty album informed the next one, right? And maybe playing in enough shitholes around America got them in tune with what happens when you make a record, which is, as Brendan O'Brien says, when you make a record, it's perfect. It's supposed to be, when you play live, it's all about the moment.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Sure.
And so when they finally got a bigger team, a bigger platform, a bigger partners behind them, they seemed like they came out of nowhere. But the truth is they were 15 years in the making. I might be off on that. But I got to believe they're still doing what they've been doing for a long time, you know? Yeah. And so that's the test. And when I talk with people about the business, I said, it's so easy to think, I want to be a pop star, I want to be a big manager, I want to be Scooter Braun or whatever it might be. And you're looking at the end product, right? And you miss all the places where they were fueled with fear and insecurity and doubt, and I'm ready to hang it up, and I can't do this another day, and it's fun. I'm getting tired of everybody slapping me on the ass, going, hey, that's great, and I can't pay my rent.
Yeah.
And that's the test of commitment in the music business, and particularly, cutting edge for artists.
Yeah, sure.
So
So talk about some times when that commitment's been tested for you, and what's gotten you through it.
I can't think of specific moments. I can think of specific moments in general ways. I remember when I was first as a manager, I had gotten my job at Avalon Attraction, and I killed there. And I had my old boss, Brian Murphy, on our show last week, and it was fun kind of reminiscing with him. But, I had what I thought was my dream gig working at a concert promoter. But what happened was I started seeing all these managers, right, that were, how are you doing? How's the band? And I wanted to be that guy. So I got married, and then 6 months later I told my wife I quit my job today. She goes, really? Great, to be a manager, right? And so I managed a bunch of cool bands, Ned's Atomic Dustbin and the Wonder Stuff and Drama Rama and The and Primal Scream. All of them had something going on, right? We're playing the K-Rock, Christopher So's Weenie Roast and all this stuff. And I can remember a couple times being in, coming back from New York City, where I'd have to fly to New York City, and meet with the label, and none of these acts are making any money. So there's two things that come to mind that I'm going to get White thinking about. One, I was sitting in a freaking laundromat somewhere in fucking New Jersey, and I was managing the Wonder Stuff and Drama Rama at the time, and they were both playing gigs there, and I wasn't making any money, and both of them, they were good guys, were just being the worst side of being an artist from a manager, but whining, bitching, crying, and sitting there and watching all these kind of housewives, and it was like the classic, gum chewing, gal with the, big butt, and the stretchy fucking pants on. I remember sitting there going, what the fuck were you thinking about, Steve, leaving your fat fucking gig where everybody wants to meet you, everybody wants to know you so you can get them a parking pass, whatever. And my boss, Brian Murphy's been at Avalon. He's been there for years. I could have been there for years, right? And thinking, oh, my God. And then driving to the airport from New York City back in the 70s and 80s, where there'd be all kinds of burnout cars off to the side of the road. It looked like a war zone. Yep. And I can remember I would always get depressed flying back from New York, just going, what am I doing here, man? What the fuck am I doing here? And so much so that when Richard Griffiths asked me to come to work at a label, I couldn't say yes fast enough, because all of a sudden then I got to be the rock star. I'm staying at the Four Seasons. I got the car to pick me up and bring boom, all that stuff. And those are moments I remember, There were moments along the way with Incubus, but I won't go into because they're still out there, and that's like family. But there were moments where we were all tested, where sometimes as a manager, you have a sense of what the right thing to do is from a business, from a rational, from a playing field point of view, and a band or a band member is, I'm an artist. Where they want the artist exclusion, which means I don't want to have to be burdened by any rational thought or implications or ramifications. Handle it, kind of thing. And I can think of moments there where I just thought, fuck. And I suppose ironic that was when we were all making money. So that the money wound up not being really the fundamental issue.
So what gets you through that?
You sometimes, I don't know, you just, I would stay in it, and then something would turn. I mean, that's what it comes down to. And I can think of it in Incubus, we used to talk about it all the time, how many times when we needed something big to happen, a tour, a this or a that, it happened. Was it magic? No, we were always out there fishing. We were always out there banging. But, most of the time you come back and you don't have a fish on the end of your hook. You know what I mean? And I've said that to people. I said, you just got to keep fucking showing up, man. If you don't show up, nothing good can happen. Showing up sometimes, bad shit can happen, Steve. Yeah, I know. I know. But nothing good can happen unless we show up. So you show up.
Yeah, that's good.
It's funny. Somebody told me again, I've said it a million times, you only need one or two great yeses at the right time to change everything. Golf, you can hit it all over the ballpark, make a long putt, bang, all forgiven, right? And that's life sometimes, and it's unfair sometimes because I can think of countless people that I reckon were great professionals and great managers that didn't have the right horse at the right time. And why? Don't know. And I know from my own fear and insecurity, I go, don't think about it too much, Steve. Just
Yeah.
don't think too much about it.
Yeah.
And does that make me a shallow man? I don't know.
Sure. So you mentioned some mentors along the way. Who've been the most important mentors for you, and what have they taught you?
Well, two of them in particular, and one was on our little web show last week, a guy named Brian Murphy, and he was the face of Avalon Attractions, which was the big promoter in town here in the 80s. And he had a partner by the name of Bob Geddes, and they were two very, very different characters, you know. And Bob grew up in Southern California, was a Riverside kid, went to UCLA, was an All-American linebacker, played professional football, had a jock, competitive, swing a bar stool at you mentality, right? And really kind of Clint Eastwood intensity about him, right? And it was a certifiable tough guy, right? And then you had Brian Murphy, who was like this really soft touch kind of guy. He got upset, I think, when I told him he was a soft touch. I don't mean that in a weak way. That was his way, was to be patient and work through people and so forth. So when I talked earlier about that meeting where I had a meeting with the guy I told him I wanted to, that was Bob, bad guy to have that conversation with. My bridge back to the company to save my ego and to be the guy was Brian Murphy, who could have said, you little fucker, you passed on us, like so many people, fuck you, right? But Brian was like, so how's the castle? And and we were co-promoting a show together.
Yeah.
And so he knew all the right things to say. And so between those two guys over 7 years, I had the Brian Murphy patience approach to look at, and I had one guy in my area going, fuck that, just do that. And then, but I would see the patient approach work. And there were times when I'd see that the patient approach in the music business, sometimes your willingness to do the right thing is viewed as weakness by people, and they want to test you, right? And for those folks, you need to give them the hammer to look at, right? You're like, whoa, I don't want to go there, right? So I said, somewhere between those two frames of reference came me. I think if you ask me, my predisposition was probably much more to the hammer guy. But having seen the patience approach work, it definitely, taught me, particularly with artists sometimes, even though I'm sure all the guys in Incubus might take issue on any given issue we might have dealt with, I recognize that you need to have a repertoire of pitches, and having a high, hard one in the music business in your pocket, always good.
Yeah.
And when I've looked at business people, I want to know they got the high, hard one, but then the first lesson I give them, I need to know that you can nip a corner here because we don't need to throw heat at everybody. It takes too much energy for everybody. You don't have as many in you as you think. So parcel those out carefully. And,
that's good.
And only when people really deserve it. And when they do, make sure you just bang them so everybody can see and go, wow, geez.
Yeah.
I don't want to go there.
Sure. No, that's great. I mean, I think the way you describe it, like it's easy to see that in a partnership where one partner can be the heavy and but to summon both of those within yourself, I imagine.
My other great mentor, it was this guy Richard Griffiths I talked to you about, and we had him on the show too. And I don't want to make this a shameless pitch for my show, but these are things that if you're interested in the music business, you should watch those episodes, because Richard was very English, we used to call him King Richard at Epic, and because he made it very clear that he was the king, and Steve, you are a knight at the round table, but I am the king, right? And he taught me how the business really worked. And there was another guy, the chairman of the company, by the name of Dave Glue, who was this work-a-day Cleveland dude, lifted weights and was a team player, and he showed up at 8 o'clock in the morning when I was working at Epic. I would go back every month. I'd go back to New York for a week. And I'm a chronic early riser. So, nobody showed up in New York before 10:30, so I'd
Right.
get in the office. I'm thinking, what the fuck, man? I don't want to stay in a hotel. So I'd get there at 8 o'clock, and Dave Glue would be there. And he taught me so much about the music, but the best lesson was the simple one. Steve, here, let me tell you about the record business. It's all about set up, right? Which is take the time, organize what you can organize.
Yeah.
You know, for artists, that's presentation. Make sure your presentation is going to add to the music. You know, don't put up these kids that I put up a couple of videos on my website, and it's some video with clinking glasses across the fucking room where the band sounds like shit, and they'll go, "What do you think?" And I said, "I think you're an idiot." And they're like, "What do you mean, man?" Take that shit down. It doesn't help you, right? It's presentation is part of that setting things up. So I learned a lot from him, and I learned a lot from Richard about how it really goes. And I learned a lot about record company politics and motivation, you know, that people are in there, they're trying to get their bonuses. And so this notion that the record company's doing it for you needs to be taken with a grain of salt. Not that every idea is shitty, but it needs to be taken with a grain of salt. And so having seen that from those two guys on the inside was really like, for me, was that when all these kids send me their notes saying, I'm taking my master's certificate from Berkeley. I took my master's certificate in Dave Glue's office, in Richard Griffith's office at Epic Records. And your master's certificate doesn't mean jack shit. But if you watch Richard Griffiths in a couple of these interviews, you'd have a much better understanding of why your piece of paper may not be as important as understanding how the business really works.
Right.
Yeah.
Am I scaring you yet, Cassie?
No, I love it. No, this is stuff we you know, I've never actually seen any of your academy stuff, but I feel like I just need to watch it because this is like lessons we learn in our business that everyone needs to have.
Yeah, the lessons are universal, you know. It's funny, people, I had a Little League coach back when I was 11 or 12 years old, right, and we're practicing double plays and it's baseball, so I'm thinking about baseball now, the playoffs and all that. And so I remember one day, go inside, I take 2 steps and just kind of snag the bag, and I'm going through this whole thing, and he goes, "Stop, Steve. When you think too much, you hurt the ball club," okay? And people want to make the music business, I think, sometimes more complicated than it really is, and it can be very complicated. But at its core, it's as simple as if you don't have great songs, if you don't have the ability to be a great performer, right, and hopefully have both those, you're probably not going to have a chance to make money in the music business. Now, you could be a songwriter who can't perform, but you write unbelievable songs. Max Martin, nobody even knows what he looks like. He could walk in this room, I wouldn't have a fucking clue who he is, right? He can make a living, right? Rihanna doesn't write her own song, but she's a terrific performer, got an undeniable thing about her and a great voice. She can succeed, you know? When you put both of those in the same package, right? Home run, right? But without that, there's nothing there. So everything after that becomes kind of like gravy if that's the steak. And so for folks out there, it's really simple. If you're going to make money as a manager, you know this, Josh, there's only one way, folks. You have to have a big act. Otherwise, you're a well-respected manager, okay? If you want to have a career in the music business, as opposed to maybe a great payday, you need to be able to do it over time. Probably most big artists have had what you would probably go back in time and see 10 years of prime time.
Right.
Say the Rolling Stones have made a living off of 10, 12 years of prime time stuff.
Yeah.
Certainly the case with Incubus. U2, the core of the songs that everybody wants to hear, probably 10, 12-year period, right?
Yeah, I mean, we've spent a lot of time thinking about that on the artist side, if you got 10 years, you're set for life, right? And you're not only set for life
if you remember to get the money.
Well, I don't necessarily mean financially, right?
Yeah.
But in terms of your legacy, your
brand.
impact that you've had.
Yeah.
And that's even, a lot of guys do it in less, but very few go beyond that.
Yeah, and the ones that do, it's a handful.
Right.
It really is a handful. And the interesting thing is you'll see for the artists out there, the common denominator you'll see amongst those artists, sad that I'm not with Incubus anymore, but they would qualify in some ways, is that they've had a long-running group of people that were there from very early days that managed to make it through all of that gestation period and the big period and then no matter how high you are, if you're U2 coming down the backside of the mountain and you can still play 5 nights at Staples Center and everybody thinks you're over. Well, in terms of being
good way to
hip
be
in the
over.
moment, right? Which is Bono's thing, apparently. He just still wants to be hip in the moment. Bono, these kids think you're as old as their grandfather. You can't. All you can be is a hip old guy, okay? And you're fucking filthy rich. Get over trying to be hip. That's that whole fucking Apple kerfuffle. We're important for everybody. No, you're not.
Yeah.
Right.
But you're still important to your fans.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if you're lucky enough to get to there, you are in freaking hallowed ground.
How important is that? I want to talk for a minute about brands in music, right? And you bring up a good point. And when we work with brands, right, there's obviously this tension sometimes between our existing fan base versus finding new fans, right, or customers, right? So how important is that, is playing to your core versus trying to expand to new audiences?
I think you need, if you're writing great music, right, and doing all the things that attracted your original fan base in the first place, I don't see how you lose them, right? If your fans believe they know who you are and you do things that are consistent with who you think they are, it works. And an example comes to mind. I saw, last year they had those great Target commercials with Gwen Stefani, right? So Gwen Stefani was being Gwen Stefani in those, right? She was being just Gwen. I don't know. I love her, right? Okay. Yeah. And so I would argue that actually added to her thing because she was still being herself versus if she was, I can't think of what it would be, did some commercial that was totally whack, right? And totally outside. If she was doing a Geico commercial, right?
Or
you know what I mean?
Mountain Dew.
Or Mountain Dew, right? Now I heard one on the radio or on TV that I think is the start, sadly, of a Christmas campaign. All of my favorite things, and they don't show her, but it sounds like Gwen Stefani, right?
Wow.
So I heard that, and I thought, well, I can almost hear her singing that to her kids, so that's good, right? Eric Clapton, back in the day, in the early days of brand sponsorship, beer companies were always the greatest promotion guys out there, right? And Anheuser-Busch in particular were really good. And they had a big campaign first with Eric Clapton doing a Michelob commercial, right? And it was great because it was Eric Clapton and kind of this blues, but it fit Eric Clapton's thing. And then they had Phil Collins doing some things. So it always kind of worked in there. So I think when those brand things sync up with the person you think you know, they wind up being great. When it's clear somebody's just out there as a celebrity shill, I think it takes on a different edge.
Yeah. How do you in the context of RenmanMB, do you think about or do you talk about the concept of selling out?
Me selling out or the artist selling out?
Well,
I talked about it with the band a lot when we were back in the day, and this I won't get out of school. Brandon is very much the artist,
sure,
right? And I say that in almost the cliche of the artist. I kidded around that if Brandon hadn't been successful in Incubus, he'd have been carving candles out in Topanga Canyon, right?
I can see that.
And I mean that in a good way because that's who he is.
Yeah.
When he says I didn't really do this for money, he means it. But now I forgot where we were going with this. I was doing
Selling out.
Yeah, you said
selling
you were
out the whole
talking
set. So
about the band
I
about
can remember when they started to have real success, right? He was more concerned about that and felt uncomfortable with it, right?
Yeah.
And then at the same time, you have all the trappings. He's a handsome guy, so there were models at every show. I can't tell you all the things that are going on. So in a way, the cliche life comes to you, right?
Sure.
And so we had a lot of conversations back in the day, and I think over time, I said, look, Brandon, this is what you do, man. You write songs, you paint, you do your thing. You're doing what you do, okay? And this is fucking America, okay? And if you're great at what you do, okay, you'll get paid for it. For Christ's sake, Dog the Bounty Hunter was in fucking jail, okay? Then he became the greatest bounty hunter, and somebody said, this guy's got personality. They turned him into a TV. But that's Dog the fucking Bounty Hunter, okay? And he gets paid for that, okay?
Yeah.
I said, so there's nothing wrong with being being great at what you do and getting paid for it. Now, if you hosed everybody, if you had everybody thought you were writing these songs, Robin Thicke, and you really weren't, you know what I mean? And you were selling something bullshit. Is that selling out? Yeah. When we had a Honda sponsorship early on in their career, and we had that conversation, well, I don't want to feel like we're selling out. I said, it's not selling out. The people that like your band are driving Hondas. Brandon, you don't go out there, but I walk around constantly at crowds and so
That's
forth.
really cool.
And you guys have funny art and distinctive stuff, which they're going to put on this card, but more importantly, on a business level. You taking $1 million from fucking Honda is going to allow us to keep the ticket price low, to add to the production value here. And these guys are so happy to be in business with you and happy to represent you in their product in a way that works, that it allows that we're going to get them to run advertising, so we get a bigger bang for our buck. And I think over time Brandon got more comfortable with it because it was just, Brandon, this is what you do for a living. If you really want to be a starving artist, that's the easiest one in the world to do. If you want to balance it, it's a little bit trickier. So I don't think you need to sell out to do it. And if it all gets down to, are you doing something that's really who you are?
Right.
Because I think people, Bob Less had the greatest line last week. He was talking about that people haven't gotten smarter or whatever it was. He goes, people just have better shit detectors than ever. And I think that's absolutely true. And bullshit detectors in particular, I would say.
Yeah, that's great. All right, let's go to some Twitter questions.
Yeah.
Oh,
All right, this one's from Debbie Wallace 5,
Incubus
who
fan.
says she knows you.
Oh, yeah.
Would you ever consider managing a band again, missing your savvy ass?
I've thought about it. I said one day that Incubus would be the last band I managed, and as I sit here today, I'm happy to be John Madden sitting up in the booth watching.
Right on.
But I miss you, Deb, and all the Incubus fans, greatest fans in the world.
Nice.
Seriously.
Yeah, well,
Okay, another question from Debbie Wallace 5. What music is turning you on today?
The Weeknd.
Nice. Love him. Looks like another Incubus fan here from Tara and Esther. Ask Steve why Brandon needs to take his shirt off so much. Not that I mind.
Because he can. And if I looked like Brandon Boyd, I'd have my shirt off too.
Nice.
is that it?
And by the way, all the Incubus fans love it. They all talk about it, but there was a period when he wasn't taking his shirt off, and people didn't like it as much.
I have.
Yeah, sure.
And I told him, take that shirt off. Fuck.
It's
Sure.
weird, but I think Incubus, in my high school years, I'm 29 now, so.
You're 29?
Yeah.
That's hard to believe.
So.
Can you believe it?
When I was in high school, I listened to Incubus every morning from like 6:30 to 7:30, every single morning for like 2 years straight, in like the darkness, getting ready for school. And so when I hear Incubus today, it's like it kind of stops me in my tracks, and I just have to sit and
What was your
think.
favorite song?
Drive, probably.
Drive.
Yeah, I
Mine
mean,
was Aqueous Transmission.
yeah, that
Nice.
that one's good. But like just listening to you talk about them, like I just want to
Yeah.
go home and play it because, like, that
You know, it's
was
funny.
just so high school for me.
Yeah.
Incubus was like, that's when you think of like the keyword chart of like high school, think prom, like, you know, the jock jackets and stuff like that. But I literally go Incubus, prom, like that's the first keyword that comes to mind.
It's why, that's the power of music, is that it's a snapshot for some moment in your life, some good, some bad, and that's why there are people like Deb Wallace that have seen the band 20 times.
Sure. Yeah.
And I miss that part of it. You know, going to Incubus concert, I didn't go this year, didn't feel comfortable going, and my kids went. It was weird. First time, my kids went, I didn't.
That's funny.
And I miss that part of it.
Yeah.
But it's because of that, because I've met so many Incubus fans over the years that all had those great moments. And so for me, it was the reminder that those people were feeling about Incubus the things that I remember about the Rolling Stones or Led Zeppelin, where it was just like, I can't believe we're here.
Mm-hmm.
I can't believe they're right there.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I spent a little time with the band. A guy that worked for us grew up with Mikey, and they did a little drum and bass project together, kind of early on. I don't know if you remember that. Shout out to Kyle if you're listening. But he was close friends with the band.
Yeah.
The Kyle I know.
Yeah,
He
Kyle
looks like
Mortensen.
he's an Incubus fan.
Yeah, he's a
He's got
Mikey
the total
knows
vibe.
everybody. Mikey
For sure.
it was the greatest networker amongst the band.
Yeah.
And I miss talking to Mikey a little bit too. We don't talk that much anymore, but
That's cool.
he was the guy. Everybody would go, there's a guy in England. I go, Mike Guy's got 90. They go, that's the guy. That's the guy. Yeah, the guitar player. Yeah, that's him,
funny.
Mikey.
Nice. All right, well, a couple of final questions as we wrap up. You use the motto "fuck the gatekeepers" a lot on the show, which I love. And so I'm curious, how do you put that to work in your own business?
Well, first let me say that the fuck the gatekeepers isn't me like winding up the gatekeepers as most people think. Right?
Yeah.
It's really kind of like the Marines have their battle cry, hoorah, or whatever it is, right? That's like my personal battle cry,
Yeah.
which says that you're going to face any number of obstacles out there in the music. Program director, the club owner that won't take your calls, the A&R guy that won't return your emails, whatever it might be. And that rather than cry about that, you just go, fuck the gatekeepers, and you go, right? And so that's my less than gentle personal mantra.
Sure.
But the interesting thing is that more often than not, the gatekeeper is looking at you right in the mirror. It's all the questions you ask and answer yourself, all the questions that you don't ask that should be asked, and all of that. And so the fuck the gatekeepers, when it comes to the music business, is really in the simplest form is, hey, it's tough. I get it. What are you going to do about it? Me, I'm going to say, fuck the gatekeepers. Let's make this happen somehow.
So give us a fuck the gatekeepers moment
Fuck the gatekeepers.
in RenmanMB.
But in Renman MB, less in with Renman MB, because Renman MB is just kind of a, I don't even know how to describe it. It started as a hobby kind of thing, and different times they play, and it's kind of taken on a life of its own. And I really do enjoy talking to people. I enjoy sitting here talking with you folks. If there were no cameras, if there was nothing, this would be this fun, But there's a business element to everything, right? And you guys put on a thing here. You got to hire people. You got to get a studio and all that kind of. There's a lot of work that goes on and all that stuff, and which requires help and so forth. And so my big challenge, fuck the gatekeepers moment, is how do I keep doing this and find a way to do that so that that my hobby doesn't turn into a financial liability.
Right.
And so in some ways, I'm just like the artist out there now. Brandon would kid me about it. And now you know what it feels like to be an artist. You got in front of the camera instead of behind it. And I think it was turns out to be ever so true. And so I struggle with, how long do you do this? When you keep writing checks in addition to all the work, I think it would be easier for me. But that's the manager that I can't escape that scorekeeping. That's why I'm not truly an artist, and why I'm not a culture guy. Like so many of the people you've had on the show, I looked at your list of folks and thought, wow, this is a fucking, talk about being the outlier, that scorecard guy. So, I don't know how I rank, but every day some days, every day I wake up like golf now going, today I'm not, this is the last one, or this is, and I keep showing up.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I'll keep showing up, folks.
That's
Yeah.
great.
For a while.
I love it.
So-
I love it. And then just thinking back to your days as a promoter and as a music fan, what are some favorite shows that you've seen over the
Talked
years?
about one the other day with Murphy, never forget. U2, Joshua Tree, LA Coliseum.
Yeah.
Before U2 would put a video screen on the.
Yeah.
If anybody could believe that, no, we don't use video. There was that point where that would look like you were trying too hard.
I went to that show in Shoreline Amphitheater.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that was one.
That
And
was
there was a platform off to the side of the stage, and at the Coliseum, You know, they have it's like 100 steps down from the backstage area down to the stage. So when the show would start, the lights would drop, right? And so behind the stage, only a precious few people could see what was going on, or the people with the shitty seats on the side. And the tour manager would drop that flashlight, and you could see him coming down one step at a time. And then all of a sudden, the audience now knows they're coming in that building thing, and then and bang, and it just went. And I remember sitting there with Murph going, "Fuck, this is unbelievable."
Yeah.
So cool.
Our party, everybody probably looking at us going, "Who are those two fucking guys?" And to which you'd go, "Not important.
Right.
Don't ruin our moment here."
Yeah. Oh,
That's
cool.
one.
Nice.
Rolling Stones, I'll never forget, first show, I saw the Rolling Stones, 1972, 3 o'clock, matinee show at the Forum. They played 2 shows one night.
How cool.
They had a big tongue in front of the stage there with me and my buddies and a bowl of hash and amongst other things. And boom, show start, boom, out Mick jumps out through the freaking tongue, ding, ding, and I just go, God! We just exploded. My buddy's hair actually caught on fire. We put it out and say, pass it, man. Come on, don't hog it, Gilbert, you fuck.
That's awesome.
So,
That's fantastic.
anyway.
Steve Rennie, thanks, man.
No
I appreciate
problem.
you
I
being
enjoyed
here.
it.
Awesome.
That was
Thank
awesome.
you.
All right, it was fun. Much less stress sitting over here.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's
Nice.
fun.
Yo, that was Steve Rennie. I think you might be smarter than when we started if you listened carefully. I love that dude, man. He had so many good things to say, even though, you know, his references were all about rock, which I don't know that much about. But hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, leave us a comment on Twitter at Rebel Radio Net, or write it. You know what? Write us a letter for the holidays. Address it to Rebel Radio and Santa, and maybe the Elf on the Shelf will be watching out for you this holiday season. Hey, come back next week. We got Casper and Rusko, 2 of the godfathers of dubstep. If you're not familiar with dubstep, these dudes really helped put it on the map back in the day, and they've been on hiatus and are coming back for more. We get into all that next week on Rebel Radio. Peace.